Did you know that in the 1970s, over 60% of Americans were proudly part of the middle class, but today it's less than 50% and still falling? That's not just a number. It's a warning that the foundation of the American dream is crumbling. How did we get here? Why are so many families struggling, working harder, yet falling behind? And more importantly, who's really benefiting from all of this? In this video, we're uncovering the 10 real reasons the middle class is collapsing. And some of them will shock you. From rising debt to vanishing jobs, the picture isn't just about money. It's about power, control, and survival. Stay with us. The truth might surprise you. Number 1, wage stagnation. Let's start with one of the most silent killers of the middle class, wage stagnation. Here's the harsh truth. Workers today are more educated and productive than ever before, yet their pay hasn't kept up. According to the Economic Policy Institute, since 1979, worker productivity in the U.S. has increased by over 60%. That means we're doing more work, faster and better than we did decades ago. But average wages, they've only gone up by around 17% during that same time, and that's before adjusting for inflation. Once you account for rising costs, especially for housing, healthcare, and education, the real purchasing power of the middle class has barely budged. In some areas, it's even gone backwards. So where did all that extra value go? Mostly to the top. In fact, CEO pay has skyrocketed by over 300% since the late 70s, while the average worker's wages have crawled. This isn't just unfair, it's unsustainable. Millions of people are doing everything right, getting an education, working full-time jobs, even juggling side gigs, and still struggling to save, buy a home, or prepare for retirement. That slow financial suffocation doesn't just damage wallets. It crushes hope, drains motivation, and breeds anxiety. And here's the kicker. This wage stagnation isn't happening because workers are less valuable. It's happening because power has shifted. Unions have weakened, corporate profits have soared, and the average person is left with less leverage than ever before. If you're feeling like you're always busy but barely making progress, you're not imagining it. This is the system working exactly as it's been designed. Number 2, exploding housing costs. For decades, owning a home was the ultimate symbol of middle-class success. It meant stability, pride, and the belief that you were building a future. But today, for millions of Americans, home ownership is slipping further and further out of reach. Over the past 10 years, home prices have skyrocketed. According to the National Association of Realtors, the median home price has risen by nearly 50%, while incomes have barely moved. That means the typical family is paying more for less, or being priced out entirely. In many cities, even a modest starter home now comes with a 6-figure down payment and monthly mortgage payments that rival luxury rent. And if you think renting is a better option, think again. Rents have soared too, especially in urban areas. A one-bedroom apartment in many cities now costs more than half of the average worker's monthly paycheck. And it's not just about money, it's about access. There's a growing housing shortage in the U.S., especially for affordable and entry-level homes. With construction lagging behind demand, competition is fierce and first-time buyers are getting pushed out by investors and cash offers. This is creating a dangerous cycle. When people can't afford to buy, they rent. When more people rent, demand rises. And when demand rises, so do prices. Meanwhile, housing becomes more of a commodity for profit than a basic human need. For middle-class Americans, this shift is devastating. It turns what used to be a pathway to wealth, buying a home, into a financial roadblock. Families are forced to delay or abandon their dreams of homeownership, leaving them stuck in a cycle of rising costs and shrinking options. And with housing tied so closely to stability, education, and opportunity, the ripple effects are massive. Number 3, crushing consumer debt. More and more Americans are borrowing money not to thrive, but just to survive. From credit cards and personal loans to buy now, pay later services, consumer debt has exploded. As of 2024, total household debt in the U.S. has hit an all-time high of over $17 trillion, and it's still climbing. But here's the real kicker. This isn't about people living lavishly. It's about people covering the basics: groceries, gas, rent, medical bills. When wages stagnate and costs rise, debt becomes the fallback, and that fallback is quickly turning into a trap. Credit cards are the worst offender. With interest rates often exceeding 20%, even a small unpaid balance can snowball into a financial nightmare. And for many middle-class families, paying only the minimum keeps them stuck in a cycle of debt that never seems to end. Then there's student debt, car loans, and rising personal loans. Combine that with unpredictable emergencies, like a car breakdown or sudden medical issue. And it's no wonder so many Americans are one financial shock away from disaster. And the psychological toll, it's massive. Debt creates stress, anxiety, and even shame. It erodes confidence, limits opportunity, and forces people to make impossible choices, like choosing between paying off a loan or taking their child to the doctor. The truth is, this debt crisis isn't the result of irresponsible spending. It's the result of a broken system where the middle class is expected to borrow just to keep up. And when your future depends on high-interest loans, that's not freedom. It's a modern form of financial imprisonment. We pour hours into every video to give you real stories backed by real facts, not clickbait. So if you've made it this far, drop a comment and tell us what shocked you most. We actually read them all. And please, hit that subscribe button. It's just one click, but it means the world to us. Number 4, the college trap. For decades, we were told the same story. Go to college, get a degree, and you'll land a good job. But for many Americans, that promise has turned into a costly trap. Today, the average college graduate walks away with over $37,000 in student loan debt, and that's just undergrad. Add graduate school interest and late payments, and that number can double or even triple. Meanwhile, the job market has shifted. Many entry-level jobs now require a bachelor's degree just to apply, yet they pay no more than what high school graduates earned decades ago. The return on investment just isn't what it used to be. In fact, a growing number of college grads are finding themselves underemployed, working in jobs that don't require a degree at all. Think retail, food service, or gig work. And while they're stuck making less, the debt clock keeps ticking. What's worse, student loans are nearly impossible to discharge, even in bankruptcy. That means your education debt follows you for decades, limiting your ability to buy a home, start a business, or build wealth. And let's not forget the emotional impact, the stress of mounting debt, the guilt of financial pressure on families, the fear of never getting ahead. For many, college has gone from a launch pad to a lifelong financial burden. It's not that education doesn't matter. It absolutely does, but the system has become commercialized, turning students into customers and degrees into high-priced products with no guaranteed outcome. And while universities continue raising tuition, offering fancy facilities and new programs, too many students are graduating into a reality of debt, disappointment, and disillusionment. The middle class can't grow if higher education becomes a gamble most people lose. Number 5, healthcare costs are out of control. In the United States, getting sick can cost you everything, even if you have insurance. Healthcare is one of the biggest financial threats facing the middle class today. Despite being one of the wealthiest countries in the world, the U.S. spends more per person on healthcare than any other developed nation. Yet millions of people still struggle to afford it. Let that sink in. You can be fully employed, insured, and still go bankrupt from a single medical emergency. A report from the Kaiser Family Foundation revealed that over 100 million Americans have medical debt. And this isn't just from major surgeries. It's often routine procedures, emergency room visits, or even life-saving prescriptions. Health insurance premiums have also skyrocketed, cutting deeper into people's paychecks each year. And even with insurance, deductibles and co-pays are rising, leaving families to cover thousands of dollars out of pocket before coverage even kicks in. This financial burden forces people to make heartbreaking choices. Should they go to the doctor or pay the rent? Should they get that test done or save the money for groceries? Many delay care, skip medications, or ignore symptoms altogether, which only makes things worse in the long run. And when a crisis finally hits, they're unprepared, physically and financially. This isn't just a personal issue, it's a systemic one. The for-profit healthcare model turns basic care into a luxury, not a right. And for the middle class, it means living with the constant fear that one accident or illness could destroy years of hard work. Healthcare shouldn't be a privilege, but right now it's becoming a luxury that even middle-income families can no longer afford. And that fear? It's quietly eroding the very idea of security in middle-class life. Number 6, the gig economy is replacing stable jobs. At first glance, the gig economy sounds like freedom. Work when you want, be your own boss, choose your own schedule. But behind the flexible hours and app-based hustle lies a dangerous shift that's hitting the middle class hard. Platforms like Uber, DoorDash, Instacart, and Fiverr have created new ways to earn money, but they've also replaced traditional jobs that once offered stability, benefits, and long-term growth. The result? Millions of Americans now find themselves juggling multiple gigs just to make ends meet, with no job security, no health insurance, no retirement plan, and no legal protections. According to a 2023 Pew Research study, more than 16% of U.S. adults earned income from gig platforms in the past year. And for many, it wasn't by choice. It's a fallback, not a career path. Gig workers are classified as independent contractors, which means companies don't have to pay for things like Social Security, unemployment insurance, or even basic labor protections. That saves businesses money, but it puts all the risk on the worker. Even worse, pay in the gig economy is often unpredictable. Surge pricing, tips, and app algorithms can change daily, making income unstable and stressful. And since most workers are paid per task, not per hour, they're often underpaid for their time, especially after gas, maintenance, and taxes. Sure, the gig economy offers short-term flexibility, but in the long run, it's replacing career-building jobs with hustle-based survival, and that makes it nearly impossible for middle-class workers to plan a future, buy a home, or raise a family with confidence. Freedom without stability isn't really freedom, it's just economic uncertainty with a side of burnout. Number 7. The rise of monopolies and mega corporations. In today's economy, a handful of companies control almost everything, from where you shop, to what you watch, to how you work. And while that might seem convenient on the surface, it's a major reason the middle class is getting squeezed. Over the last few decades, we've seen a wave of corporate consolidation. Giants like Amazon, Walmart, Google, and Meta have swallowed up competitors, controlled entire markets, and set the rules for everyone else. Small businesses? Many have been priced out, pushed out, or bought out. This concentration of power creates a dangerous imbalance. When a few corporations dominate an industry, they can dictate wages, suppress competition, and limit consumer choice. And since they often operate at massive scale, they can afford to pay low wages, offer minimal benefits, and shift jobs overseas, all while posting record-breaking profits. According to a 2022 study by the Roosevelt Institute, market concentration is directly linked to wage suppression in many industries. That means workers have less bargaining power, fewer job options, and no leverage to demand better pay or conditions. And here's the kicker. These mega corporations also hold massive political influence. With endless lobbying power, they help shape policies and tax laws that protect their interests, often at the expense of working and middle-class Americans. It's not just about business anymore. It's about control. When too much economic and political power sits in the hands of too few, the middle class pays the price. And while corporate CEOs see their wealth multiply, millions of workers are left stuck, not because they aren't working hard, but because the game is rigged against them. This isn't capitalism at its best. It's monopoly capitalism, and it's draining the lifeblood of the American middle class. Number 8. Declining union power. Once upon a time, unions were the engine of the American middle class. They fought for better wages, safer working conditions, health benefits, paid leave, and pensions, the very things that made a middle-class life possible. But over the past few decades, union membership has plummeted, and with it, so has the power of the average worker. In the 1950s, about 1 in 3 workers in the U.S. was part of a union. Today, that number has dropped to just over 10%, and in the private sector, it's even lower. That decline didn't happen by accident. Corporate lobbying, anti-union laws, and aggressive union-busting tactics have systematically weakened labor rights. And without collective bargaining, individual workers are left to negotiate on their own, often against powerful corporations with entire legal teams. The result? Wages have stagnated, benefits have eroded, and job security has become a thing of the past. Studies from the Economic Policy Institute show that unionized workers earn, on average, 10–30% more than their non-union counterparts in similar roles. They're also more likely to have health insurance, paid time off, and retirement plans. But it's not just about money. It's about dignity, respect, and a seat at the table. Unions gave workers a voice. Without them, millions of people are left voiceless, with no real power to challenge unfair treatment or demand better conditions. When unions weaken, the middle class weakens, because no single worker can stand up to a system alone. But together, they can. The decline of union power didn't just hurt workers, it reshaped the entire economy. And unless that balance shifts back, the middle class will continue to shrink, one job at a time. Number 9. Outsourcing and automation. Once upon a time, you could graduate high school, land a job at a local factory or office, and build a solid middle-class life. But that path has been slowly disappearing, not because people stopped working hard, but because the jobs themselves are vanishing. Let's start with outsourcing. Since the 1980s, millions of American jobs, especially in manufacturing, customer service, and tech support, have been relocated overseas where labor is cheaper and regulations are weaker. For corporations, this means bigger profits, but for American workers, it means fewer opportunities, lower wages, and entire towns left behind. Then there's automation, the quiet revolution happening in warehouses, factories, grocery stores, and even offices. Machines and software can now do the work of humans faster, cheaper, and without a lunch break. AI is writing reports, robots are packing boxes, and self-checkout lanes are replacing cashiers. According to a McKinsey report, by 2030, up to 30% of current U.S. jobs could be automated. And it's not just low-skilled jobs. Even accountants, paralegals, and entry-level analysts are at risk. What's worse, the new jobs being created often require advanced skills or degrees that many displaced workers don't have or can't afford to obtain. And even when those jobs exist, they frequently pay less than the ones that were lost. This isn't about resisting change. It's about recognizing that entire sectors of the economy are shifting and the middle class is being squeezed out of the equation. The promise of technology was to make life easier, but for millions of workers, it's making it harder to stay afloat because progress without support leaves people behind. And that's exactly what's happening. Number 10, psychological burnout and economic anxiety. Not all damage can be measured in dollars. One of the most overlooked, yet devastating, signs of the middle-class collapse is the mental and emotional toll it's taking on everyday Americans. For many, life has become a constant grind, working long hours, juggling multiple jobs, trying to keep up with bills, rent, childcare, and debt, all while being told that if they just worked harder, they'd be fine. But the reality is, the system isn't built for them to win anymore. And that slow realization is creating something dangerous: burnout, anxiety, and hopelessness. According to the American Psychological Association, money and economic stress are the top sources of anxiety for Americans today. Even more than health, relationships, or work itself, middle-class families are feeling this stress the hardest because they're expected to have it together, yet live one emergency away from crisis. It's not just about being broke. It's about feeling stuck, powerless, and constantly behind. No matter how hard you work, the goalposts keep moving. Retirement seems out of reach. Vacations feel like luxuries, and the idea of getting ahead becomes just that, an idea. This chronic stress leads to mental health struggles, physical exhaustion, damaged relationships, and even reduced life expectancy. It's the silent cost of an economic system that keeps people running but never lets them rest. What's worse, most people blame themselves. They don't see a broken system. They see personal failure. But this isn't about laziness or poor choices. It's about a society that's set up to reward the few and exhaust the many. And that invisible collapse, it's just as real and just as dangerous as any financial crisis. The collapse of America's middle class isn't just about money. It's about opportunity, dignity, and the future of an entire generation. We're seeing a perfect storm: rising costs, stagnant wages, disappearing job security, overwhelming debt, and emotional burnout. Add to that the growing power of megacorporations, weakened unions, and a system that rewards the few while leaving millions behind. And it's no wonder the middle class is shrinking. This isn't happening overnight. It's been building for decades. But now, the effects are too big to ignore and too personal to brush off. If you've ever felt like you're running harder just to stay in the same place, or like the American dream keeps moving further away no matter what you do, you're not imagining it. You're living it. But here's the most important thing to remember. This isn't your fault. You're not failing. The system is. And once we understand what's really happening, we can start working toward change. The problems are big, but they're not unstoppable. Rebuilding the middle class starts with rebalancing power, rethinking priorities, and taking action at every level. Support policies that raise the federal minimum wage, invest in affordable housing, regulate healthcare pricing, and offer student debt relief. These aren't handouts, they're investments in economic stability. Vote for leaders who prioritize working families over corporate profits. Unions were once the strongest defense for the middle class. Supporting labor rights and fair organizing laws can help restore worker power raise wages, and bring back dignity to everyday jobs, break up monopolies, enforce antitrust laws, push for corporate accountability and tax reform that closes loopholes for billion-dollar companies. While systemic change is key, understanding your finances, avoiding predatory debt traps, and sharing knowledge within your community can provide short-term resilience. Acknowledge that burnout and anxiety are symptoms of a deeper problem. Prioritize self-care, seek support, and know that you're not alone in this fight. Ultimately, change won't come from one person. It comes from millions of voices demanding better. The collapse of the middle class is real, but so is our power to rebuild it together. If this video opened your eyes, drop a comment. We'd love to hear your story. Check out our previous video for even more insight into the hidden costs of the American dream. We pour hours into every script, every fact, and every frame to bring you real value. So please, support us with a quick subscribe. It's just one click, but it means everything.